Next is Jorn. I'm going to go with Jorn, God of Winter. 3 mana, 2 generic, 1 green, legendary snow creature god. Jorn is a 3/3, and whenever Jorn attacks, you untap each snow permanent you control.
Yeah, how often do you have green untapping?
You mean untapping lands?
Well, permanents.
Green untaps
Okay,
lands,
yeah. But this is,
every so often as a way to add
this
extra
is
mana.
any permanent.
But this can untap your creatures and give them pseudo-vigilance, which
enchantments
is less common, but not green. Green has plenty of ways to untap creatures. Every so often they get to untap other stuff. But since it's tied to snow, that kind of fits it more in with what green does.
Seaborn Muse is another type of effect that green gets that untaps everything.
And Wilderness Reclamation, I think, was only untaps lands, but that's a very, very modern card. Sorry. But yeah, comparing it to Seedborn Muse makes a lot more sense with what established players are going to expect.
Yeah, I don't know necessarily what it could represent, but maybe green gets to untap everything all at once, whereas blue untaps.
I mean, compared to blue, like doing targeted effects. And also, green's untapping effects seem to be tied to once per turn abilities, like triggering on attack or triggering on upkeep, but not necessarily or tapping. Like Arbor Elf gets to you can tap it to untap a land. There's also another card in Kaldheim that's a 2/2 that you can tap to untap any snow permanent, or is it snow land?
It's snow land, but there was one in Modern Horizons that untapped any snow permanent, which is a eerily similar card.
So I think that's more of a power level balance than a new benchmark saying like, oh no, they're only allowed to untap snow lands, because Jorn obviously
they probably wanted pretty much the same card, but they changed it, and they probably wanted to make it an elf to fit in with the elf deck for limited and the set in general.
So the back of Jorn, God of Winter, is Caldring, the Rhyme Staff. It is the staff he's shown holding in some of his other artwork. It is a legendary snow artifact for 1 generic mana, 1 blue mana, and 1 black mana, and you can tap it to play target snow permanent card from your graveyard this turn. If you do, it enters the battlefield tapped. Obviously, you could use it to play snow lands from your graveyard, but there aren't any snow lands that are like also fetch lands that just sacrifice themselves, right? You'd have to find a different way to sacrifice or discard them. So I guess it's more at home replaying snow creatures that you chump block with or want to reanimate.
And just to point out, rhyme, R-I-M-E, is meaning is a frost. It's a layer of ice, right? It does not have to do with, trying to match sounds of rhyming.
Okay, yes. So Jorn's biography, it mentions he's the god of weather. On his card, it says god of winter, but his biography does say god of weather. I don't know if it's a typo or if he's actually the god of all weather, rain and, I guess, thunder as well. He's a tracker, and he's a tracker and really knows his way around Kaldheim and finding safe passage across and through all the realms of Kaldheim.
Do you know where his staff is originated from? Because I'm really curious, because he is mono green, his staff is blue-black.
Like in Mythos or on Kaldheim?
Yeah, like where he got it, or who it belonged to before, if he made it. He probably didn't make it, though. It just doesn't seem like he made it.
I don't know. What I do know is he's Alrund's brother, and he tracked the Cosmos monsters for Alrund as Alrund was hunting them down to gather their secrets. So he would actually track the monsters, and Alrund would, I guess, knock them out and cause their trainer to black out and go back to the Pokemon Center as he gained all of his experience points. But besides that, it just is he can control the weather around him, and even though he just kind of lets the weather do whatever he wants, he doesn't actually seem to control it all that often, or doesn't really want to.
Not yet. If you are the god of winter, wouldn't that be your job to control the weather? Or
I don't know. I don't know what
but the gods are more mortal, right? So they're not the ones controlling the weather and controlling the forces of nature, but they're more.
They can.
They can, though. Yeah.
I don't know if they, collect offerings from people in order to give them good weather for harvest or anything. That's not really mentioned in anything I've read so far, but I suppose they could. That's kind of what people expected the gods to do, in
in Norse mythology, right? Specifically.
Would people give gifts and offerings to the gods for good weather or something like that?
Where you try to bribe the gods in a sense. You're both in thanks and hope of the future. I've been spending this time trying to think of the analogies to the Norse, because there is no one god of winter in Norse. To some extent, he matches a pair of particularly powerful gods. Frey and Freya have a father who matches up to a lot of god of weather kind of things. He's usually better known as a god of the sea and seafaring and fishing. He's also a bit of a god of fertility and the like. But he's particularly, you thank him for a bountiful catch of fish and so on. He and his sister wife, which happens very rarely in Norse, but more often than others.
Which god are you talking about, by the way? What's his
Njord, Njord, or Njorth.
Okay.
Who is also paired with, there's a Germanic goddess, Nerthus, that is compared, probably his sister wife, that kind of thing. And that it's not perfect because it's not particularly, he's a bit of a god of weather, but not of winter. Whereas there's another, I don't know if it's the goddess Skadi, who is much more, she's a goddess of winter in a sense, but she's fairly minor in some ways, but she's associated with bow hunting and skiing in winter in particular, in mountains, and she's hunting. She's goes out for revenge with the death of, or I'm not sure if it was her father or somebody, but she's in a sense the ski goddess. But there's a definite connection to her with
there's definitely a connection between hunters and Jorn being good at tracking. And even though Jorn is a god of the weather, he's pretty connected to winter. After all, his card says god of winter.
Well, and one of the things is that winter in Norway and Sweden is a time of darkness. And the word for darkness is Skadi, which is the goddess of winter, and skiing is a goddess of darkness, but she's not particularly associated with darkness except as the time of winter. But I noticed her name, Skadi, is also... it sounds a little bit like the group of gods that you were talking about, but they're...
Yeah, the Skoti.
And not just darkness, but also means shadow.
As we get more into the story, we might be able to find a stronger connection with why they're named.
Yeah, so it sounds a little bit like there's no reason that they had to choose one or the other, kind of merge the two. Because snow is an important part of this set, so why not have a god of snow?
Right. Yeah, that's what they were going for, I think.
Dan, you mentioned why you think the staff would be blue and black, and I think one reason is just for gameplay and commander. It lets you have a 3-color commander. All these colors are associated with snow cards. It does give you an interesting twist with the 2 half-side cards, where if you're like a mono-green deck, you can still play them. If you're a blue-black deck, you can still play the back half. Or you get the mix and match if you play all of it.
I think they tried to make it a part of the card too. I see your point there, but if I'm a green mage, an adventurer, I can pick up any sort of magic staff and use it. Even though I might be a green mage, that's something that's a common theme in like Dungeons and Dragons, for example. Like you can cast a fireball with a staff of fireball as a barbarian or whatever. You don't even have to be magic because the item is magic.
Another reason is blue and black in the set have a lot of self-mill. It has a lot of snow stuff. The blue and black realm, Karfell, is snow covered, lots of ice, has ice zombies and
I was
stuff.
going to mention that.
The backside seems to represent a lot of the zombie archetype stuff in the set. So it could just let it play in more decks too, and then you only splash green for the front half, but you're really just playing it for the artifact.
I'm just looking at the odd collection of abilities that these two things have. I mean, when he attacks, you untap the permanents that they can then attack with you. If in a sense it's a kind of you block with them, you tap with them, you can still untap and leave something behind to block. There's all sorts of interesting connections, but then how's that associate with being able to pull more things out of your graveyard?
Well, the staff taps and the creature the card you get from the graveyard comes in the battlefield tap. So if you have both of them in play, you can actually activate the Rime Staff,
pull something from
your graveyard, attack with Jorn, untap both of them, and then activate Cauldron again.
Yeah, since they have different card names, you can't have the front and the back in play of the same god. And these two do work together pretty well. He doesn't untap the creature you play if you played it from your graveyard and let you attack with it. It doesn't give him haste, and it untaps him during declare attacker, so it can't make the attack. But it still lets you get a land back and then untap that still. And even if you don't have both in play, Jorn can still untap your lands, can still untap anything else you've tapped, or just give you a bunch of mana, like a sort of Feast and Famine.
Right.
So I think these two sides pair pretty well. It's interesting that they're a mix of colors, so you kind of have to give... If you really want to play both at the same time, you have to stretch yourself a little. Or you could just play one or the other if it fits well into your deck.
This does seem like there's good support for multicolor, really, in the set, right?
They want you to play two colors, and then in
splashing for a third.
Draft and Sealed, you can always draft a third color depending on how you play, but the set is only really built for two colors. All the 5-color enchantment or whatever, I don't think they're expecting anyone to really realistically
the
be
world
able to play
tree itself really helps you play the 5 colors. So you're not really you can't be a 5-color deck unless you're a world tree deck, which
quite possibly in draft or Sealed.
I think also in Constructed.
You do have 3 color lands. You do have all the triomes and stuff for
standard. You have the triomes.
If you really want to play 3 color, but I think you would play the world tree anyway if you really wanted to cast 5 color stuff.
Yeah, and the other thing is
you necessarily have to.
You could be a 2-color deck, but then have world tree in your deck, but still be able to activate the world tree.
When I was looking through it, I only saw one other card he's depicted on. I might have missed one or two. But he's depicted on Blessing of Frost, a 4-mana green snow sorcery that lets you distribute X +1/+1 counters among any number of creatures you control, where X is the amount of snow mana spent to cast this spell. Then you draw a card for each creature you control with power 4 or greater.
And they got a picture of a mammoth on there too.
So he's clearly tied with, mechanically, snow permanents and snow mana. And that extends to other cards he's depicted on as well.
Power 4 or greater, which I don't know how much support there is in this block, but it ties in with other, like the Cold Snap, mammoths.
Like the Aurochs from Cold Snap and Ice Age that got bigger for each other. Wasn't that only when they attacked they would grow? So you'd have to play this main phase 2 after you attacked and all your Aurochs got the buff, I think. But... I'm not looking at the card in front of me. I can't remember. But this is one of the cool ways that I think they've incorporated snow into the set, where if you have no snow mana, this still draws a card for each creature you control with power 4 or greater, which is just an ability on some cards that cost 4 mana. So you could absolutely play this if you have no snow lands. You just don't get the other benefit with the +1/+1 counters.
That's a good point. Or, if you had one snow land, you at least get one +1/+1 counter, and that's not bad. So long as you're drawing a card or 2.
Yeah, absolutely. So all in all, I don't know if Jorn's going to come up in the actual story. I don't think he's mentioned in the ones I've read so far, but they're still coming out with a new story every week or so. It fits in with the mechanics of the set really well.
He definitely seems to have an affinity with animals, because in his artwork he has 2 little ferrets coming up to him, and then in Blessing of Frost, the animals are joining forces with him.
Yeah, some kind of mammoth, a bear, and
a stag.
Stag of some kind.
I only see 2. I see. Yeah.
That's a feature of green god, I would think. Just affinity to beasts and animals. I don't think that's hard to get around.
Not necessarily unique to a god, you think?
Right.
Because, Garrick, planeswalkers do that all the time as well.